Chapter 462, A Man Infatuated. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. You think you have the right to know? It's a deal between Bukyonfan and me. You just need to stay here. Jang Yuochen paid no attention to the Orange Star emissary. He put his hands together to practice the scripture of Emperor Ming's Empyrean as if he was alone. You can defeat me, but you can't detain me. In an attempt to escape from the room, the Orange Star emissary mobilized her genuine chi and displayed a bodily movement. But, when she began to run her genuine chi, she felt a deep chest pain. The genuine chi inside began to reflux. The Orange Star emissary was in a lot of pain. She clutched her chest, sat on the ground, and breathed heavily. Jang Yuochen did not open his eyes. I've sealed your 9 meridians. I only released one of them. You can't run genuine chi now. Otherwise, you'll suffer a backfire. The Orange Star emissary tightened her fingers and stared at him coldly. Her eyes were full of resentment. At dusk, the sun was about to set. Bukyonfan came to the courier station of Martial Market with source of spiritual fire and delivered it to Jang Yuochen. Jang Yuochen held the source of spiritual fire and examined it. When he was finished, he covered the box, saying, "You can leave." This was simply a transaction. Jang Yuochen did not stand on ceremony with Bukyonfan. Each took what he needed. Since Bukyonfan had come to save someone, he had to be well prepared for everything. There had to be a way for him to take the Orange Star emissary away. As for Xianan outside and the warriors from the law enforcement hall, they were not as strong as Bukyonfan and the Orange Star emissary. They could not keep them there. Thank you again. Bukyonfan clasped his hands together to salute Jang Yuochen. He took a golden metal mask from his sleeve and placed it over his face, showing only his eyes. He took the Orange Star emissary and displayed a bodily movement to fly out. The metal mask on his face was very similar to the one Yi wore. He really is infatuated. It seems that his martial flaw still exists. As long as there's such a flaw, he'll never be well matched with Yi. Jang Yuochen shook his head and sighed. Rumble. There was a fierce fight happening outside. It didn't last long. Xianan and a group of wounded warriors rushed in and appeared before Jang Yuochen. Xianan's eyes were red. He was very angry. Jang Yuochen, was the Orange Star emissary rescued? On his chest, there were 3 crimson gashes. The wounds were so deep that his white ribs could be seen. Jang Yuochen sat on the stone bench in the courtyard and responded calmly, "You've been hurt by the Orange Star emissary's Hell Ghost King Claw. Obviously, she has run away." Just glancing at it briefly, Jang Yuochen could see that Xianan had been wounded by the Hell Ghost King Claw. Why did you let her go?" Xianan yelled, holding his hands tightly. Jang Yuochen looked at him and said casually, "I didn't let her go. She was rescued. Besides, someone who has reached the first change in the fish dragon realm, and a large number of warriors from the law enforcement hall, can't stop her. Is it that odd that she ran away from me?" Xianan looked at the scars on chest and said angrily, "If it weren't for Yi, I wouldn't have been hurt by her." Jang Yuochen feigned ignorance, saying, "How do you know that it was Yi? He wore a metal mask and displayed the Hades sword skill, the black market's unique skill." But he would do that?" Xianan said. Jang Yuochen knew the masked man had been Bukyonfan, not Yi. Of course, he did not reveal that. A warrior who had attained the completion of the Earth realm quickly stepped in from the outside. He got down on one knee in front of Xianan. "Elder, law enforcement master is arriving." Xianan's expression changed. If the Orange Star emissary had not escaped, he would have been awarded when law enforcement master came, for rendering outstanding service. Now, the Orange Star emissary had fled, and Xianan would be guilty of a dereliction of duty. He would have no merit, rather he would be in trouble. A moment later, Shen Fengxian, master of the law enforcement hall, dressed in a dark black robe, walked in imposingly from the outside. "Master of the hall." Xianan immediately bowed to him. Because of the fear in his heart, Xianan's face was drenched in sweat and his eyebrows were soaked. A law enforcement hall was set by the Marshall Market Bank in each district. Shenfengchen was the master of the law enforcement hall in the 7th district. Both the law enforcement hall and the school of the Marshall Market belonged to the Marshall Market Bank. The school of the Marshall Market trained qualified talents for the Marshall Market Bank. Its training was conducted in the Outer Palace, and the Saint Academy. It carried out cultivation from childhood and had a perfect teaching system. Those who could graduate from the Saint Academy would become high-ranking officials in the Marshall Market Bank. They would have superior rights and a lot of resources. The Law Enforcement Hall recruited talents for the School of the Marshall Market. In terms of talent, the entrance requirements for the Law Enforcement Hall were lower than that of the School of the Marshall Market. Any extraordinary warrior had a chance to enter the Law Enforcement Hall. People in the Law Enforcement Hall had not been trained since childhood. Most developed profound martial cultivation before joining the Marshall Market Bank. The other people were not admitted into the Saint Academy for lack of exceptional talent. Thus, they had to join the Law Enforcement Hall. Therefore, the Marshall Market Bank laid more emphasis on the School of the Marshall Market and input plenty of resources to it. Certainly, warriors from the Law Enforcement Hall also had great rights. The Marshall Market Bank assigned many shady things to them. Shenfengchen's face had a scar and a cold draft of air encircled his body. He glanced at Xianan. In a cold voice, without any emotional turmoil, he said, "Where is the Orange Star emissary?" Xianan shook and knelt down on the ground with a loud sound. She has run away. Please spare my life. Spare my life, Master of the Hall. It's none of my business. She was released by Zhang Yuochen. Shenfengchen's eyes turned green and he looked at Zhang Yuochen. He said, "Did you release the Orange Star emissary?" Xianan, who had reached the Fish Dragon realm, was frightened to kneel down in front of Shenfengchen. Shenfengchen was a very powerful figure. Zhang Yuochen on the other hand was fearless. He said calmly, "Of course not. The Orange Star emissary was rescued by Di. Elder Xi just said the same to me personally." Shenfengchen knit his brows and immediately turned back. He stared at Xianan, saying, "Did Di come here?" "Yes." "He rescued the Orange Star emissary," Xianan said. "I'm sure that it must have been him." Bam! Shenfengchen flung up his arms and struck Xianan. Xianan was flung back and slammed against a stone wall. "Crap! How dare you release both the emissary and the young master of Black Market Excellence Hall? I'll fix you when I return." Although Shenfengchen was yelling at Xianan, his eyes were fixed on Zhang Yuochen. Zhang Yuochen stared fearlessly at Shenfengchen, with a smile on his face. Shenfengchen snorted and swung his sleeves. He left to chase Yi and the Orange Star emissary. If he could get them, he would gain great merit. Zhang Yuochen looked at the stone wall in the distance. Xianan climbed out from a pile of stones. He spat blood and glared at Zhang Yuochen. Then, he left. The air was cold and there was a bright moon in the sky. As if nothing had happened, Zhang Yuochen held the Abyss Ancient Sword and practiced Sacred Guiding Sword in the art. He practiced and pondered this movement repeatedly, in an attempt to understand its quintessence. A manner of Saint Bugentry in the 7th district. The Orange Star emissary returned to her natural shape. She was dressed in an orange robe and wore a veil. She had a graceful figure and extraordinary temperament. She stood in the air as if floating on a mass of mist. She looked at Bukion Fan. "I'll pay you back for saving my life." Swish. Her tender body glittered with brilliance. She flew out of the manor and disappeared into the night. Bukion Fan clasped his hands behind him and looked solemn. He glanced in the direction of the Orange Star emissary's departure and stood still for a long time, as if he had become a sculpture. "Young master, she is only an evil woman sent by Di to disturb your heart state. If you keep being infatuated with her, you'll be defeated again the next time you meet him." A skinny elder came out of the darkness and spoke in a hoarse voice. Bukion Fan exhaled and withdrew his eyes. "I understand. Didn't you harden yourself against affection last time you went to the Death Primitive World?" The elder continued. Bukion Fan stayed silent for a long time before replying. "10th uncle, I'm going to the Death Primitive World again. This time, I'll practice for half a year." "Young master, you shouldn't be too impulsive," the elder advised. "The Death Primitive World is very dangerous. If you are careless, you could die." The last time you went there, you were almost. Bukion Fan waved his hand. I'm not being impulsive. I'm clear about what I'm doing. I not only want to practice the Iron and Blood martial classics, but also the treasured bodies of double spirits. Before breaking through the fish dragon realm, I must accomplish treasured bodies of double spirits. Only in this way can I compete with Zhang Yuochen in the future. The elder breathed a sigh of relief and said to himself, great. The young master isn't infatuated with that evil woman anymore. He's thinking about how to defeat Zhang Yuochen. After watching the battle between Zhang Yuochen and the Orange Star Emissary today, Bukion Fan was worried. Zhang Yuochen had defeated the Orange Star Emissary in just 10 movements. He needed 100 movements to defeat her. It meant that Zhang Yuochen was stronger than him. He could only avoid being defeated by Zhang Ruochen if he practiced harder than him.